I thought the wedding announcement in the mail was a sick joke, because my younger brother was completely single. But when I called him, he swore he had no idea who the bride in the photo was. That night, my phone rang from his number, and a woman's voice whispered from inside his locked, empty apartment. Shaking, I looked closer at the wedding photo to see why the bride was covering her eyes with her hand, and my blood ran cold when I realized her mouth was flipped completely upside down. Hey, what's good, everyone? Tonight we have 3 stories from r/no sleep, and I promise you, none of them have a clean ending. Minecraft running in the background, stories ready to go. Let's get into it. He almost missed it altogether. Buried under junk mail and pre-approved credit card offers, the announcement was printed on a piece of white cardstock. On the right side, a photo of a couple. On the left, a simple message in plain font. Just married. David and Emma, June 6th, Acadia. He read it twice, standing in front of his mailbox, trying to recall how he knew the couple. The only David he knew was his younger brother, who was not only single, but perhaps the most single man he had ever known. He looked over at the photo, and his jaw dropped. It was in fact his brother, strolling down the beach, hand in hand with a young woman, both of them caught mid-laugh. His brother gazed adoringly at the woman, at Emma, who was covering the top half of her face with her free hand. He thought it was strange that she'd be obscuring her own eyes in a wedding photo, but the whole card was so strange, he didn't dwell on it. He went back inside and called David. Well, muzzle fucking tov. Huh? Who's the lucky gal? David paused, clearly trying to puzzle out the question. What the hell are you talking about, man? He explained the situation, sent a photo of the card. Instead of laughing it off like he expected, David went so quiet he thought the call had dropped. He eventually said he had no idea who Emma was, or who had sent the card. His friends were pranksters, sure. But how would any of them have gotten his brother's family address without David's knowledge? He said he'd ask around. After the call, he texted his parents and some family friends. One of his old neighbours had received a card too. His parents found one in their mailbox. Thank God he called before they discovered it on their own. He genuinely thinks his mum would have had a heart attack. Before he fell asleep, he texted David his update. David still hadn't found the culprit, and there was something about his brother's seriousness that put him on edge. Was he missing something? He spent the next few hours trying to figure out who Emma could have been. There were so many significant women in their lives who bore that name. A childhood friend David had harboured a crush on for years before her family moved away. A tragic incident at their high school where an Emma in David's year had fallen behind some lockers, dying from positional asphyxia. A rager at an Emma's house in college that ended in both of them spending a night in jail. Apparently his life was just one long stream of Emmas, and none of them seemed plausibly linked to a wedding announcement. Then came the night, the part he still can't make sense of. He woke up in the middle of the night to his phone ringing, David's name on the screen. He picked up and grumbled something into the mic. There was silence for a few seconds. Then he was shocked to hear a woman's voice. Hello? Quiet, slow, unmistakably feminine. He sat up in bed. What? David? Who is this? He double-checked the screen. It was David's number. Another long pause. Yes, this is David's apartment. Then the caller hung up. Disturbed, he called David back immediately. No answer. He called 3 more times. No answer. He was starting to panic. He phoned David's buddy Mike, who lived in the same building, and made him do a wellness check. When Mike got to the apartment, his brother was asleep inside, perfectly safe and sound. He didn't have anyone over, no signs of a break-in, no signs anyone had touched his phone, and yet according to the phone logs, there had definitely been an outbound call from David's phone to his. David had no memory of calling, and the voice certainly didn't sound like a man impersonating a woman. He tried giving the card a more thorough look the next morning, trying to see if he'd missed some clue. The longer he stared at the woman in the photo, the more creeped out he got. Why was she covering her eyes? If someone had gone through the trouble of creating fake couple photos, why not give Emma a more natural pose? He could only look at the announcement for a few seconds at a time before he had to put it down. Maybe that's why it took him so long to realise that the woman's mouth had been flipped upside down. Alright, one down, two to go. That one ended with a detail that you can't unsee once you notice it. This next one starts completely normal too. A sleepover at a friend's house, pizza, video games, and one weird rule. After 9 p.m., you do not leave the bedroom. Not for anything. Not ever. They had been friends for 13 years, and in those 13 years, he had not once slept at his house. So, why the sudden invite? He asked. Leo held the door open. My parents are going out. Figured it's about time you saw my humble abode. The house was not a humble abode. It was a great white clapboard house that stood on the land as if it had been there forever, and the town had grown around it. Old oaks stood guard over the grounds. Their shadows fell across the yard. Inside, there was a smell of old wood and polish, and something more besides, a smell like turned earth after rain. His mother was a woman built of small bones, and she carried a frantic smile that did not touch her eyes. She moved about the dim rooms with a nervous energy, asking of drinks and of snacks. His father sat in a leather chair and did not speak, a large man whose eyes were dark and still, and they followed them as they passed. He heard Leo's mother whisper words to him, urgent and low. He could not make them out. At 7 o'clock his parents left. Leo's room was a small island of the ordinary in that house. Posters, a rumpled bed, a console before the television, the only place that did not feel as if it belonged to the dead. They ate pizza and played games, and for a time he did not think about the house, or the silence that lay coiled in its other rooms. Then near to 9, Leo paused the game. Hey man. He would not look at him. There's just one weird rule my parents have. Weird rule? After 9 p.m. we have to be in here, in the bedroom, and we can't leave. His eyes were serious as stone. Not for anything, not for the bathroom, not for a drink, nothing. The door stays closed until sunrise. You're kidding, right? What if I have to pee? Pee now. He gestured to an empty bottle on the desk. And after 9, you use that. The laugh in his throat died there. Downstairs, a clock began to chime the hour. Leo's head snapped toward the door. Bong, bong, bong. He was on his feet before the 9th bell had sounded. He crossed the room and closed the door. He slid a heavy bolt of steel into its housing. The sound it made was final. There. A sweat had bloomed on his brow. We're good. Leo, what the hell is going on? Nothing, man. Just a weird rule. He turned up the sound of the game until it was a roar in that small room. But he did not see the game. He saw only the bolted door, and felt a coldness take root in his gut. The house was quiet again, but it was not the same quiet. This was a listening quiet, a waiting quiet. An hour passed and there was no sound from the house. Then came a sound from the rooms below, a soft and measured thumping on the boards of the main hall. What's that? He whispered. It's nothing. House settling. That's not the house settling, Leo. The sound ceased. Then came a new sound, a dragging, a scraping of some great weight across the wood floor beneath them, as of a heavy thing with broken feet. He muted the television. Leo set the controller down, his face pale in the shifting light of the screen. Just ignore it, Liam, please. It goes away if you ignore it. What? What is it? What goes away? Before he could answer, it spoke. The voice came from the hallway, faint at first, on the other side of the door. Leo? Honey? He did not move. The voice was his mother's voice. Leo, sweetheart, your father and I came home early. I brought you boys some warm cookies. Open the door. He looked to Leo and saw a boy cast in tallow. He stared at the door as if it were the gate of hell itself, and raised a trembling finger to his lips, shook his head. Leo, that's your mum, he whispered. Don't be silly, sweetie, we're inside, the voice said, just outside the door now. I just baked your favourites, chocolate chip. They're getting cold. But the voice was wrong. There was a terrible perfection in its sound, like a memory of a voice, and not the voice itself. Then came the knocking, a soft and wet sound on the far side of the door, as if a piece of meat were striking the wood. Leo? Liam? Are you boys all right in there? You're being awfully quiet. The doorknob turned, once to the left, once to the right. Then it began to rattle in its fitting with a growing violence. "Boys, this isn't funny." The sweetness broke in the voice, replaced with a hard, ragged edge. "Open the door." A great blow struck the door. The frame groaned in the wall. He scrambled away on his hands and feet until his back was against the far wall. The voice changed. It spoke again, and the voice was a ruin, a low and guttural thing that gurgled in its throat. "I know you, Reent Heary." They huddled in the dark, not moving, barely breathing. Outside, the thing scraped and whispered and tested the door. And eventually, after what felt like hours, it withdrew. The sounds faded, the house fell still, and Leo finally told him the truth. His great-great-grandfather had built this house upon unhallowed ground. From the first night, there was a wrongness in the wood and in the walls. A bargain had been struck. The family would have the house by the light of day, but from 9 until the dawn, the house was given over to that other. "It gets lonely," Leo whispered. A tear cut a clean path through his face. "It likes to play. It mimics people. It uses things it finds to try and make a body for itself. But it's getting bolder. It used to just make noise. Now it tries to get in." He finally met his eyes, and in them was a guilt as deep and cold as a well. It wants someone new. A cold truth settled, the sudden invite, the fear in his parents' eyes, the heavy bolt on the door. "You brought me here for it?" "I didn't want to," Leo's voice broke. "My parents said it was getting too strong, that it wouldn't be satisfied with just them anymore. They said if it had someone new, someone not from the family, maybe it would leave us alone." He had led him here as a lamb to the altar. His parents had not gone out. They were in this house, in their own locked room, praying that the beast in the hall would choose him. Then the scraping stopped. The whispers died. The house fell into a quiet so profound it was like the earth had stopped its turning. Then a new sound came, the sound of feet on the stairs, heavy, a footfall, and the dragging of a dead weight. Thump, drag, thump, drag. It was not trying to trick them anymore. The game was done. The footsteps ceased outside the door. Silence held for a count of 3, then a crack like thunder as a great force struck the door. The wood splintered. The deadbolt shrieked in its housing. Crack! A web of breaks spidered from the lock. Crack! Bang! The deadbolt was torn from the frame like a tooth from a jaw. The door swung inward, and in the blackness of the hall, he saw it. It had filled itself. Its body was a terrible congress of things stolen from the house. Floorboards for shins, rusted pipes for arms, its torso a twisted cage of stair banisters, and within that cage he saw his own duffel bag, pulsing like some dark and foreign heart. Its head was the grandfather clock from the hall. The pendulum swung behind the glass face like a wild and frantic eye. From the clock a voice came, not one voice, but all of them, a discordant chorus speaking as one. T-I-M-E-I-S-U-P. He lunged for a flashlight behind the television, found the switch. A great pillar of white light struck the creature full in its face. It shrieked. The light seemed to unmake it from itself. Spoons clattered to the floor. Floorboards split away. It stumbled back into the shadows, and so began the longest watch of his life. He held the light like a sword. The beam was the only thing keeping it at bay. Leo huddled behind him. The creature lunged from the edges of the room again and again, and he drove it back with the beam, and they waited and listened to it breathing in the shadows. The hours passed this way, a stalemate between the light and the dark. The beam began to fail, flickering, dying. The creature gathered itself in the dark, and with a final, triumphant roar, it charged. In that same moment, a pale grey line was drawn upon the black horizon, the first sign of dawn. The creature struck him. The flashlight was knocked from his hand. He was on the floor. The monster stood over him, its clock face bent low. He saw his own face reflected in the arc of the swinging pendulum. Then a single pure ray of morning sun pierced the window and touched the creature's back. It froze. A profound stillness came over it. Then it began to come apart. The clock head crumbled to fine dust, the pipe arms fell from its shoulders, the banisters of its chest unwound. The stolen silver and the splintered wood and his duffel bag all collapsed into a heap of simple things. In moments, all that remained was a pile of refuse and a thin layer of grey dust that smelled of the grave. The sun streamed through the window and filled the ruined room with light. He lay on the floor and gasped for breath. Leo wept against the wall. They had lived. There were footsteps in the hall, not of a monster, but of a man. The door to Leo's parents' room opened. A moment later they stood in the doorway. They did not look at the ruin of the room, nor at the pile of debris where the creature had been. They looked at him, and he saw on their faces not relief, not any gladness, only a deep and bottomless disappointment. The horror was not ended. The plan had failed. The sacrifice had not been made. The thing that was the house would be hungry again when the sun fell. He was the one who got away, and for this, they would never forgive him. 2 down, 1 to go. That one was about a thing that had been feeding on the same family for generations, growing stronger every year, getting bolder. This last one is about something that feeds on an entire town, something that has done it before, something that a 10-year-old boy figured out before any of the adults around him ever did. He is 30 now, 20 years since it happened. He just wants it to stop. He was a pretty average kid, a little weird, but every kid is a little weird. He had an older sister, a couple of good friends. He played soccer, he thinks. Honestly, he has a lot of trouble remembering much of his childhood, but he remembers getting a Nintendo DS for his 10th birthday. They had a big party in the backyard. Practically the whole neighborhood showed up. His birthday was just before school got out for the summer, so the air buzzed with excitement. The grown-ups started a fire in the little fire pit and sat around it and drank beer while the kids ran around. He was allowed to stay up past his usual bedtime. They chased fireflies and roasted marshmallows until late. He went to bed happy, excited for summer, exhausted. He fell asleep quickly, the peel and stick glow-in-the-dark stars shining on the ceiling above his head. Waking up the day after his birthday, something felt off. He couldn't put his finger on it. By the light streaming in and the muggy heat in the room, he figured it was already around 10 a.m. He smiled. Must have been a final birthday treat, letting him sleep in. "Mum?" he called into the hallway. No answer. He frowned. His dad would already be at work. His sister had left the night before for a sleepover. He decided his mum must be out front in the garden. He put on a shirt and left his room. He smelled coffee, but there was none left in the pot. Dishes in the sink. Remnants of egg stuck to a pan. Not necessarily alarming, but strange. Even on days he slept in, there was always breakfast left for him. He opened the front door, opening his mouth to call out to his mum, and instantly froze. Halfway up the walkway was the mailman, on the ground, sprawled out awkwardly on the cement, fresh blood pooled beneath him. He couldn't move. The man's limbs were bent at horrible angles, his face pointed away. It almost looked like some omnipotent force had lifted him into the air and slammed him back down. He didn't need any confirmation. He backed into the house and closed the door. "Mum?" His voice broke. "Mum, are you home? Something happened outside. Mum!" No one answered. He made his way to his parents' room, pushed open the door. He saw a lump in the bed. Then he realized it couldn't be just pillows. The bed was made. All the pillows were accounted for against the headboard. When he pulled back the covers, the shock washed over him like an electric zap. Blood everywhere. He could barely see any section of the sheets that wasn't soaked in it. Her eyes were open, her mouth wide open, like she was about to scream. He stumbled backwards. His legs felt like they wouldn't work anymore. He had to call the neighbours. That was it. The number was on a sticky note next to the phone. They picked up after 3 rings. "Hello?" He heard a sort of giggle, choked, like someone was trying to hold it back, then hushed whispering, "Hi, Jackson." He assumed it was the mother, Mrs. Winston. "Is everything all right?" Something happened. My mum." "Oh, honey, why don't you head on over here? We'll figure out what's going on together." Something about her voice was unnerving him. Still, he didn't know where else to go. He slipped out the back door so he wouldn't have to walk past the mailman. He knocked on the neighbour's door. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He stepped into the flower beds and peered in through the windows. Someone was lying on the couch. Their chest was opened up like a patient on a surgery table, all guts and organs and blood. So much blood. It was Mr. Winston, in his sweater vest and brown dad shorts. He burst through their front door. It was unlocked. He went tumbling into the room, landing on his stomach, his face slamming into the floor, face to face with Mrs. Wilson, dead in front of the phone. Her eyes were open. A fly was on one of them, crawling across the white, pausing every few seconds to rub its hands together. He had started to cry. It was finally hitting him that this was real. He scrambled to his feet, nearly throwing up when he realized his face was covered in her blood. He swiped at it with his hands, then instinctively he licked his lips. He braced himself for the coppery taste of blood on his tongue, but it never came. It was sweet. He hesitated, trembling, before cautiously raising one red finger to his lips. Sweet. Memories flooded his mind. Baking with his grandmother, the sweet syrup poured into mixing bowls. It was corn syrup. He ran to his father's work on the other side of town. By the time he got there, he was close to passing out and drenched in sweat. The road was completely devoid of cars. The receptionist at the front desk had her head against the computer, her hair matted with red liquid. Before he could think too hard about it, he wiped his finger across the side of her head and licked it. Sweet too. He felt like his brain was going to break. In every cubicle, someone was dead. Some halfway peaceful, others eviscerated, entrails hanging out, bones showing, blood sprayed against the walls. But all of their blood was corn syrup. He even touched one of the organs. It jiggled, but more like plastic than a human body part. At one point, he swore he heard a giggle behind him. He whipped around. No one was there. He found his dad at the water cooler, sitting against the wall. A cone paper cup still gripped loosely in his hand, staring straight ahead, blood leaking from his eyes and nose and mouth, like he had exploded from the inside. There was a strange look on his face that he could just barely make out through the red, almost like a smile someone would only make if they were trying very hard not to. He walked home down the middle of the road, balancing on the yellow lines to have something to focus on, because he was fairly certain if he stopped walking, he wouldn't start again. He climbed into bed and closed his eyes. He didn't know what else to do. He drifted off into a restless sleep. He woke up to someone shaking his shoulder. He screamed, scrambling away. "Whoa!" His mum backed away, smiling. "Sorry, buddy, I didn't mean to scare you." He looked her over, clutching his chest. She was completely fine. White blouse, blue jeans, hair tied up like always, eyes bright and happy. "What day is it?" Her smile faded. She frowned a little. "It's Sunday, bud, remember? 2 days after his birthday, so yesterday had been real." "What happened yesterday?" She placed the back of her hand on his forehead. "Did one of those neighborhood kids get you sick, honey? Do you feel okay?" He dropped it, because he didn't know what to say. He convinced himself maybe he really was sick. Maybe it had been some kind of feverish hallucination. And he was so relieved to see her, he didn't want to think about any of it anymore. He went to eat breakfast, sitting at the table between his dad and his sister. Everything was normal, but when he left the house later that day, he saw it. On the walkway leading up to the house, something pink on the pavement, a faint pink stain, like something sweet and red and sticky had been recently scrubbed away. He has asked everyone he has ever known about that day. None of them seemed to have any idea what he is talking about. But he had almost let it go. It had almost stopped haunting him. Not until today. Today, when he walked into his therapist's office, it seemed strangely quiet. There was usually music playing, people in the waiting room, someone at the front desk typing on a keyboard. Today, nothing. No one. Silence. He let himself into Dr. Sheldon's office, which is when he found her dead on the carpet. Her blood sprayed across all the walls, even dripping from the ceiling. He immediately tasted it. Sweet. He rolled her over. Her eyes were open, a strange smile on her face. This time he did something he hadn't thought to do as a kid. He checked her pulse. She's alive. He doesn't know what to do. He can't believe they're doing this to him again. Do they think this is funny? And that is where we leave it tonight. 3 stories. A wedding photo where the bride's mouth is flipped upside down and a woman's voice whispering from an empty, locked apartment. A thing made of stolen furniture and old pipes that had been feeding on the same family for generations, and a town full of people lying dead in corn syrup who apparently still think it's funny. Drop a comment telling me which one got to you the most. I read every single one. See you in the next one.